Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. What's today? Today is Wednesday, September 21st already, 2022. You are here for the next 50 minutes or so. Thank you so much. Let's make sure that this is worthy of your time and your attention. Please engage, please interrupt, please be here with me. We are thrilled to have you. This is the download. MiHIN's monthly webinar diving into the intersection of healthcare and technology. Thank you for being here. Next slide, please. So here's what you can expect today, the welcome, and just a little bit of background. Then we'll be moving on to Referrals 101, why you are here, and then we will adjourn. Should be pretty straightforward. But I want you to constantly be thinking, like, why am I here? What did I come to find out? And are we answering your questions? Are we fulfilling your reason for being here? My name is Joanne Jarvie. Hi, I am the Senior Director of Outreach and Market Communications. And I want to talk for a second about communication. Communication is defined as the successful conveying or sharing of ideas. And I think that communication and successful communication is more critical than ever these days. Every communication in its definition, in its essence, involves at least one sender of a message and a recipient of a message. And when I think about what MiHIN does and about health information exchange and about how we use information to communicate, I want to point out, and I will be pointing out, that data is not always communicative in its essence. And we need to look at why we are moving data, why we are using data, and if the data is communicating what we want it to be communicating. And you should also know that I am probably the least technical person at MiHIN. I am a big believer that what we do, health information exchange, and especially the way that we do it in Michigan, is a socio-technical practice that will move at the speed of trust. And that technological infrastructure for sure is important, but it's the human infrastructure that also has to work. And so I'm more focused on human infrastructure. I'm your human infrastructure girl. You want to get into tech? I'll connect you. Next slide, please. MiHIN is the state's nonprofit organization that has been designated to connect disparate sectors, disparate entities, our stakeholders, the stakeholders that make up our network, to securely, legally, technically, and privately share health information. We are an unbiased data trustee. We do not produce or provide services. We are not competing with our stakeholders in the marketplace. Instead, we are trusted to convene technologically and in human form around how to share health information to advanced care, to better outcomes, and to lower cost. And I want to impress upon you that the way that I look at our work, and you're here with me today, that technology is a tool meant to serve human beings. And that what we're looking to do is to be able to connect, to communicate, and to collaborate, and have the technology, have the pipes support our work. Let's see. Next slide, please. The goals of health information. So health information exchange is a verb, right? It's the process of sharing health information, but it's also a noun. We are a health information exchange. MiHIN is a health information exchange. We are an organization, a network of organizations that provide technology and services to connect disparate, like I said, sectors. We are doing this to reduce inefficiencies, to improve healthcare access, to lower healthcare costs, to better quality of care and health outcomes, and more looking to see how personalized our healthcare system can get. How much can we make it about any one human being? We are working from the notion that what is not measured cannot be improved. Next slide, please. Just a quick background for you. In case you didn't know, in 2010, the state of Michigan applied for and received funding under the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, the HITECH Act, to build on preparatory work regarding the state information exchange, health information exchange, as a public investment in Michigan's health data infrastructure. The state received approximately $14 million through the ONC to facilitate the construction of statewide exchange. The funding was also used to further develop the Michigan Health Information Network, or MiHIN. Next slide, please. The governance model adopted by MiHIN is a hybrid model, meaning that it is partially centralized. Stakeholder groups, everybody here has access to stakeholder groups. And our MiHIN Operations Advisory Committee, called MOHAC, is just one of those groups, and they report up through executive leadership and up to the board of directors. You should also see here that we are seeking a careful balance between state government input through the Michigan Health Information Technology Advisory Council. That's the HIT Commission. We're seeking a careful balance between state government input and private enterprise. MiHIN appoints a board member from each of Medicaid, the Department of Public Health, and the Health IT Commission. This approach relies on governance rather than regulation to ensure patient privacy is protected and that the health information exchange for our state is operating in a trustworthy manner. Next slide, please. So as we are going through our slides today, and just in general, if you're connecting with MiHIN, if you're looking to work with us, the first step is to identify a use case. Why do I want to share data? What is the data going to be used for? What are policy or governance challenges or opportunities that will help us figure out how to create the technology solution to enable that data sharing, right? Why are we here? What are we trying to communicate? What information are we trying to exchange for what purposes? Does that make sense to everybody? I went through that really quick. Does anybody have questions up until this point? Is anybody here with me? Yes, I don't see anybody, but I'm trusting that you're here. Next slide, please. Oh, that's not, we'll go back to that slide. I think Mike Taylor is up. Mike Taylor is one of my favorites here at MiHIN. Mike Taylor, how long have you been working here? Be honest. 700 years.
Over 9 years.
9 years. Okay. And we were founded like 12 years ago. Mike is our senior product marketing manager. And Mike is going to go today through, it's an interesting topic. And it touches a lot of parts of our care ecosystem. Mike Taylor is taking us through Referrals 101. Now, Mike, as you know, I will be up in your grill if I don't understand something, or if I think you said something in a way that is confusing to me personally. I'm gonna hit you up. And I want to encourage everybody else too. This is meant to be a forum. This is meant to be a conversation. We're trying to learn from you as much as you are here to learn or to connect with us. So please chime in, ask us questions as they come up, and let's get this rolling. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks, Joanne. If you don't see my screen or see more than my one screen, please let me know.
You're good.
All right. So today we're going to be going through just trying to define what different people mean when they're talking about referrals, when they say electronic referrals, when they talk about closed loop referrals. There's a lot of different terms thrown around, starting with the baseline there. Then we're going to talk about Referrals Plus, which is a referral network that MiHIN has in the state of Michigan. Then we're going to talk about what is a social referral, what is MiHIN doing with social referrals. Then we're going to talk about closed loop referrals and interoperability and the direction that we're moving in that direction, as well as our overarching strategy. And I'm going to introduce this term to some of you who may not have heard it before, called cross-sector data sharing. So there's a little teaser there. We'll try to get some basic understanding as we go through that. So let's go straight into understanding what we're talking about with different referrals terminology. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a cold referral versus a warm referral. And this one kind of hits home to me because at times that I've needed to find services myself, the caseworker I was working with gave us a list and said, here's a bunch of organizations that have this service. You can call them and see if they've got availability. That's called a cold referral, whereas a warm referral is somebody who's going to say, I'm going to help you get this set up with this other organization. I'll connect with them. I'll get in contact with them. Sometimes that's just them making the referral. Sometimes that's the provider actually making an appointment on your behalf for you. So you, the patient doesn't even need to set the appointment up at all. Both of those scenarios are considered warm referrals. So here's an example of a warm electronic referral example. Referrals can be made, if you're just using the word referral, there's not a super formal thing that means. So when we're not talking about the electronic part of it, you can make a referral by picking up the phone and calling somebody. You can send a fax. There are electronic mechanisms that there are closed networks, there are open networks, there's all different types of ways. And in this particular scenario with this warm electronic referral, we have Andrea who has a patient and she's looking to get her patient to somebody who specializes in this particular problem with the twisted ankle that the patient has. So she looks up in this referral network who has the most appropriate service, and that's going to obviously not just who offers the service, but also who has availability, who's within a close range of where this patient lives. There's a number of factors in choosing, but then once you've chosen, the referral is sent to that organization. They can review the referral, and in an electronic mechanism or in the closed loop world also, you're able to not just send the referral one way, but to have two-way communication back and forth. Another thing we wanted to make sure we emphasize in this slide is that referrals can be from a healthcare provider to a healthcare provider. It can be from a healthcare provider to a healthcare provider who's a specialist, to a behavioral health. It can also be to referring the patient to somewhere outside of healthcare, like the food bank example down here. Typically, food banks don't require referrals, but there are other community-based organization programs that may require referral. So the basic concept of referral is saying, I'm going to send this patient to you. And without the idea of a closed loop, the provider who makes that referral or the person making that referral doesn't necessarily know what the outcome was. There's a lot of room for breakdown. In a closed loop referral process, the provider is saying, I'm sending you a referral for this patient, and then the receiver of the referral has the opportunity to accept or decline. And then they can also communicate back, a visit has actually been scheduled, and the provider can know that and say, cool, this is moving forward. And then once the visit or encounter has actually happened, the referral receiver can close the loop and say, the person actually showed up, and here's the outcome. We provided this service and they are good to go, or we made a diagnosis, or whatever the outcome is, they're able to get that back to the originating provider. So now that we've got some of that basic terminology out of the way, we're going to go into MiHIN's Referral Plus application. So this is a closed loop referral application, and I'm going to introduce another word that has the word closed, but it is a closed network. And that means that in order to send or receive a referral with our network, you have to be participating with Referrals Plus, and the other party has to be participating with Referrals Plus specifically. I wasn't able to log in and show a live view of this, but I got a screenshot. So you can see it flows kind of similarly to email. So it is pretty approachable from that standpoint. If you're used to using an email client, it offers a number of filters and additional mechanisms for you to be able to navigate referrals and see statuses. So on the left here, you can see all the statuses associated with referrals. It starts out as pending when the first person makes a referral, and then it can be accepted, scheduled, declined, canceled, and completed. And so you can look at only referrals in any one of those categories or any number of those categories. And there's some additional filters to see referrals that haven't been assigned to someone yet. At the second column, the second to the left, you can see at the top, you can pivot between sent referrals and received referrals. But then you'll be able to scroll down a list based on your filters, find the referral you're looking for, and the right half of the screen is then going to show you the one referral that you're looking at. And at the top, you see a basic information about who the person is the referral's for. You can see the status and some other information. And then you have what largely looks like just a traditional chat that you're able to have a conversation with the referrer and the referee, or maybe it's better said, the referral sender and the referral receiver. And you can attach documents. In this particular application, it does not have any preconceived notions about what you're attaching. So that's good and bad. Number one, it's not mandating that anything's attached, and it's not standardized what's attached, but it also gives you tremendous flexibility to be able to attach any documents that might need to be exchanged between these two parties to have enough information for the referral to take place. And then on the far right, you can see there's a little timeline where you can see statuses changed and other critical items. So our referral application, it's flowing from left to right. It functions kind of familiar to an email client. We are celebrating 11 years of referral management. Great Lakes Health Connect, before MiHIN, started this endeavor, and it's been going for quite some time now. It is one of the larger closed loop referral systems in the nation. A previous presentation that I had seen said that we had the largest closed loop referral system in the nation. I didn't have the ability to verify that fact, so I just changed this to one of the larger. But there's some statistics you can see about the number of referrals that have been sent and managed inside of this application.
Mike, I have a stupid question. Yay! So did somebody ever say to doctors, this is just showing how dumb I am, but like, do doctors have to know what happens for a patient after they've referred them out? You know, like what, like, so I just want to, like, this is part of something that we call care coordination, right? But it does stand to reason that, like, once you send somebody out for services, it could be that, you know, that's sort of like you've done your job, right?
Mm-hmm. So I have an answer, but I think it's probably a really good opportunity to try to get some engagement with those on this call. So the answer that I can give is that there are scenarios where closing the loop is absolutely necessary, even if there wasn't an insurance and reimbursement aspect to consider. There are scenarios where the provider is sending their patient, they're the primary care provider. They're sending this patient to a specialist to get something, even if it's just getting a diagnosis. Getting that diagnosis back is going to be critically important so that they can continue to manage the care of that patient directly. But I'm sure there's much more concrete than that examples of why closing the loop is important.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat, there's a lot, like somebody said that maybe that the coordination or the referrals are not done by the doctors necessarily, but by other people on the staff. So yes, so it's not accomplished by the doctor. It's accomplished by other people that are on, that are in the care team. But the information is then shared back with the the doctor does want to know. Or maybe they only want to know in certain circumstances. I just think that, thinking about how care coordination works in any of your entities or your organizations is of utmost importance here. Dina, I see that you have your hand up. Thanks for coming.
I have a comment and then I have a question. So I know that there's a big movement in the health and social care space for closed loop referrals to help with reducing the chances of readmission. So that's one of the reasons I'm aware of that healthcare providers are interested to know, if those referrals have been accepted. But my question is Referrals Plus like another social care platform?
It could be used in that vein, but because it's really only oriented on referrals, it's not, you're not getting a whole view of the person. It's just giving the ability to make a referral, and you can see all of the dialogue that you've had with the organizations that you are working with, but it's not going to give you a longitudinal view of the patient or anything like that.
It was designed, Dina, for medical providers and their specialists.
Okay.
That was the intent, and that is really how it's been used in our state. Right, Mike?
Yep.
Sorry, I muted myself. We're getting a lot of questions and some back and forth here. Will this connect to EHR systems? Like our Angela is asking. Referrals Plus is not integrated into an EHR. Is that correct?
Okay, so there's an easy answer and a not easy answer. The easy answer is there's EHR integration that we can do with Referrals Plus, but it is not connecting your current referral functionality to this network. It would be plugging some functionality from this network into your EHR, but it would not be utilizing anything that you have currently for referrals. And I see Steve Speaker speaking up.
Steve Speaker says it was not just designed for medical. Community agencies were part of the design. Okay, let me go back. Let me say that since Referrals Plus was designed and since its launch, we have seen other vendors come into a specifically social care space. And those social care referral vendors and what they're offering seem to be different in some ways from Referrals Plus. Does that, Steve, tell me what you think. Nothing.
For those of you who aren't aware, Steve Speaker is I don't know what title I'd give him, but he's a long-standing from the times of Great Lakes Health Connect and at MiHIN for a while. He was over Referrals Plus and has a lot of history with it.
Well, Mike Taylor, Steve, there's another Steve here. He didn't understand the how you said things were integrated into EHR or not. Can you say it again in a different way so that people understand?
The EHR integration would be more ability to use this tool from your EHR.
Right, like a single sign-on. Data is not being taken from this application and entered back into your EHR or vice versa.
Right.
Does that make sense, Steve Gendler? I hope so. Let's keep going, guys. We'll come back.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it doesn't reduce the amount of time.
You're absolutely right.
All right, then I do understand the answer now.
Thank you. Dina, you still have your hand up. Do you have another question? So if people are interested in learning more about Referrals Plus, we have a Bits and Bytes, which is sort of a like a companion to the download, and we'll get to that. But we're going to move on, if that's okay, and we can come back. Is that okay, Mike?
Yep.
Okay.
But I just to answer Steve, I think that we're going to get to that topic when we get to the last topic of my presentation, which is on interoperability and how we get that data moving. Oops, I didn't mean to skip the slide entirely. So Referrals Plus does have some key components that are necessary for facilitating. We've got the patient demographics. We've got important information about the actual referral itself, why the patient's being referred. It's EHR agnostic, meaning that there's no one EHR you use and couldn't participate in this referral platform. And it does support your ability to make some really, to see real-time changes happening on the referral. As I showed before, one of the statuses from, you can see that it's been accepted even if something hasn't been scheduled yet. But when it is scheduled, you can get that update. There's a number of benefits associated with using Referrals Plus that includes those real-time status changes I mentioned. You can have priority, you can set a priority level on the referral, and the receiver will be able to see this is a high priority, urgent type of referral. It does increase accountability because both parties can see what each other are doing. And so if the patient hasn't scheduled, you have a way to have visibility into that, that you might not have if something was sent over the phone or over the fax machine. There are email alerts that can be scheduled, so you can not have to log in just to find out if there is something of interest. You can set up email alerts that says there's some new update that you should log in and check it out. There's timestamps on everything, so you can see when different messages and when different things were attached and when status has changed. It is secure and HIPAA compliant, and that's we'll move on to the next slide. Those are some of the benefits. There is some new reporting that's coming out in Referrals Plus. I blurred out the organizations here so that nobody felt called out, but you can have insight into how many things are scheduled, how many things have been accepted. You can get a lot more deeply into the activities within your organization. So from a MiHIN level, I'm seeing every organization, but from your organization, if you had multiple sites, you could see all your sites in one report. And you can see on the far right, there's a whole bunch of filters that you can filter that report down by.
That's what our Bits and Bytes, you'll see that there's Bits and Bytes coming up. There's 2 more trainings on this new reporting. So we'll get to that at the end. And also it was part of our invitation. So if you're interested, join us.
All right, so now let's talk about social referrals and how that might differ from medical referrals. So medical referrals are often from, well, medical referrals kind of by definition are from a provider to a provider, and we're all under this same kind of ecosystem where we have an insurance network funding mechanism, and we all have the same paradigm. And when you want to refer to an organization that provides social services, whether that's a community-based organization or some local government or other type organization that you want to make a referral to, the paradigm they're operating under is vastly different. That introduces a whole lot of complexity, both in technology, the resources they have available to manage referrals, that impacts their, there's a whole different world when we're trying to get to somebody whom is outside of healthcare. The Gravity Project, which is by the standards organization HL7, has been largely trying to tackle issues specific to social determinants of health, and a lot of that has to do with social referrals. We've been aligning every step of the way with Gravity Project recommendations, with the domains of social needs, as they've been rolling out things, we've been trying to make sure that we're aligned exactly with how they are categorizing and presenting this information in a standard way. All right, so here's where I'm going to start to tease the idea that Steve was asking about earlier, about the fact that our the Referrals Plus network is a closed network. You have to be participating exactly in that network. So let's talk about silos. This is a well-used metaphor in our community. A lot of times people just use the term silo and it automatically means a bad thing. You're building another silo. But when we're talking about silos, what we're talking about is data that's all put into one place. And silos aren't inherently bad. If you have one silo, you don't have any problems. There's no other silos that have conflicting data, or you have people going back and forth between. There's not really any problem there, and there's no integration that needs to take place. When you have a few different silos, that can be worked out, especially when there's not geographic overlap. If you have the west side of the state using one vendor and the east side of the state using another vendor, you could have integrations just for some specific crossover scenarios. But when you start to have a whole bunch of silos and they're overlapping in geography, where my organization uses one vendor and the organization down the street uses another vendor, and we aren't able to actually exchange information, that becomes a problem. MiHIN's goal when it comes to referrals, and in most of the areas that we're touching, our overarching goal is not to create another silo. We're not saying, you give us all your data from your silos and we'll build a bigger, better silo. Our goal is to be a grain elevator that can redistribute the grain between silos when it needs to be redistributed. And when that comes to referrals, and largely in a lot of other scenarios outside of referrals, that infrastructure for being able to exchange the data already exists. It's really not technology that's the barrier. It's us. It's the fact that we have entrenched business needs in the current processes, in the closed networks that we have. Everyone's got their own process set up, and so the technology exists to be able to exchange referrals. The technology has not been well implemented to bridge networks. So here's a question that I have, because I want to introduce the idea that referrals is a big part of what we're doing, but it's not the only thing we're doing when it comes to terms like social determinants of health, or health equity or population health related activities. So when you want to make a social referral on behalf of your patient, you had to know they had a social need. You had to know that they needed this referral. That comes from someone talking to the patient or someone screening the patient. Somehow it needs to be derived. And so there's a whole bunch of different components when it comes to social needs that screening is an easy triggering event for a technology platform, right? A triggering event is really great for technology purposes because there's a clear starting point. We can say, now we know we need to do the next step. Screening is not the only way to identify a social need, for sure. Do not want to overemphasize the need for screening, but from a technology standpoint, it's an easy trigger point. But you need to identify the need. Someone actually makes a diagnosis because a patient may be describing a problem, but really it's a reflection of some other greater need that isn't being addressed. Then there needs to be an intervention. That's where the referral comes in. The referral is part of an intervention, but there's different types of interventions also. And all that we're trying to drive towards resolution. Excuse me. So this brings us to the idea of the health community, the health neighborhood. A person's health has to do with much more than just traditional medical care. And there are a lot of organizations that have very legitimate needs to be able to exchange data. This introduced the idea of community information exchange, which is a parallel concept to health information exchange. Community information exchange can happen completely independently of health information exchange, but if it is completely independent, you're going to lose all the work that's been done in one and the other when there are scenarios that you need to talk between them. And that's where cross-sector data sharing comes into the picture. Whether we're talking about healthcare exchanging with community information exchange, or whether we're talking about healthcare communicating with prisons or with schools, there's a lot of different scenarios where exchanging information from one sector to another has to take place. And MiHIN has created we've renamed our social determinants of health program to cross-sector data sharing to try to reframe the way we're thinking about things. So we're not just focused on healthcare needs to solve healthcare problems, but we're trying to say there are many sectors that need to share data across, and there's some real legal and ethical implications that we're trying to work through. One of the problems that we ran into with social referrals is that there are a bunch of referral networks. These are social coordination platforms that we're aware of in the state of Michigan. There may be some other ones as well, but these are the major players that we were familiar with. Yeah, I guess I'll do it on that slide. So we've reached out to all these organizations on this list, and we've rallied them together under a common purpose. And that common purpose is the idea of an interoperable referral, a referral that it doesn't matter which network the person you want to send the referral to is part of. We want to be able to get a person in need connected with someone who can solve that need. And having competing vendors in the same geography is just driving that value down. And I'm sorry, I see questions popping up in the chat and I have not been reading them. Joanne, are you keeping up with them? Will you interrupt if?
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt, but I think you're good. You're good still. Keep going.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, this is just to explain the idea of an interoperable referral. And this is gonna be a really poor visualization but I think it will serve to sell the message. And I want to also wanted to introduce the idea of Michigan 211, which I hadn't talked about yet. So there are shires or community health innovation regions, and communities that are trying to help the people in their community. And there are these social service referral vendors that I showed on the last slide. We've got MiHIN and Michigan 211, which is an organization that's already chartered in the state of Michigan to basically be a community resource directory across the state. And there are a bunch of regional 211s that manage the data within their region, but their job is to know who exists in their region that will help with different social needs. What are the kind of eligibility criteria for those programs, and how do they find out more? How do they get connected to those programs? The idea of that type of resource directory is going to be essential for bridging a bunch of networks of referrals, because if I have a closed referral network, I know all my participants because they all have signed agreements directly with me, right? With our ReferralsPlus network that uses ReferralsPlus that I was showing earlier, we know all the participants. They've signed agreements. We issued them accounts. We definitely know who they are. But if there's somebody who offers a service that's in this other network, we might not have any idea they exist. It's Michigan 211's job to know they exist. So we're aiming at using Michigan 211 as a common resource directory that could bridge across those referral networks. So here's kind of a representation of those parties that I showed before. And this is totally just a fictitious, obviously I numbered the communities to emphasize this is a totally fictitious thing, but some communities are using each vendor. Some people are even sending referrals directly to 211, and they're handling the referrals for them. And then we have this ReferralsPlus network over down there in the blue. In order to have a contiguous network, there's a couple of options. Well, I guess, so option one wasn't a contiguous. There's three possible paths for how we proceed. Number one is we're not making a change. We're not going to have a contiguous network. Everyone continues to operate in their own pattern as they are today. Number two is everyone rallies around a single vendor. Regardless of which one of those vendors is chosen, all the others would have to lose, and everyone starts using the same application or the same vendor. You could connect through an API theoretically. But the third option that we think is probably more palatable is interoperable referrals, where these vendors are able to make a referral across their network to other networks. And MiHIN would be that grain elevator. We would be that that broker that takes the referral from one network and hands it off to the other network and says, hey, somebody's trying to make a referral to you. And we would be facilitating closed loop referrals in that scenario, where we can pass back the acceptance message and the scheduled message, things like that. This is a very loose diagram of how interoperable referrals would work. I want to emphasize this is not a in production current state today. The ReferralsPlus network that we have that's a closed network is in production. It's in use. It's been around for 11 years. Interoperable referrals is still conceptual. We have built some infrastructure at MiHIN, but we have not piloted with any organizations yet.
And the point there is also, if I'm sorry to interrupt, but again, going back, it's human infrastructure. It's the agreement that data should be able to flow between systems, and thereby potentially giving up some of the special sauce of those systems. maybe choosing progress over profit, maybe choosing people over profit, to allow important, necessary information to be shared between systems. And to Mike's point, when you standardize data and worked on the standards of data, which is what we've done for years in healthcare, it can be technically possible. The barriers are human. The barriers are human abstracts. They're human paradigms. And they are not, and not to downplay this, the issues, the human infrastructure is also about, what data is necessary and who says that data is necessary, and do I want to share my data even if it is necessary. So this is getting like, I'm sorry, Mike, but this is getting like super technical, right? we're like in it right now. I'm wondering if we should, what's your next, where are we going from here?
I'm going to skip forward a little bit since, okay, so we just reached kind of the topic that you were addressing, which is the interoperability pledge. So we saw this potential for interoperable referrals. And what we've done over the course of 2022 is we did outreach to all of those major vendors that were on the previous slide. I think there were 10 of them. We talked to them about our vision, and they have signed an interoperability pledge that commits to those ideas that data should flow when it's appropriate and consent exists and it's legally and ethically okay. Data should flow across those networks. So they signed that interoperability pledge and a letter of intent to support interoperable referrals, all 10 of them. We began in July having a vendor community of practice coming together. We've met weekly since then, and each week we worked on, well, I shouldn't say we, I've been observing, but each week they worked on coming to agreement on what the goals were, what their chartered mission was, how they determine if someone else wants to join the community of practice, what that kind of process looks like. And so the charter was established, and now they're starting to dig into some of the details of how do we share data? What are the implications? What is this last meeting or 2 meetings has been about consent. So we've been talking about what the consent models look for each of the vendors, and trying to figure out what a consent model would look like that could send a referral across a network, and making sure that we're being good stewards of data, and making sure that we're crossing all of our T's and dotting our I's.
So Lisa, we have a lot of chats going on. It's good, Mike, and we're in line with what you're talking about. Lisa Nicolau, I wanted to see if you might come on screen here. You are the director of our cross-sector data sharing program. We are at 10:50 here, and I just want to make sure that we get to people's questions, we get to people's, like the way that they're seeing this world. But also I want to impress upon everybody, like, look, we started at referrals, like just the ability, right, to send people to another site for care. And just that in and of itself is a thing, but it's not the only thing, right? Sending somebody for care is one thing. Understanding if that care was administered and the outcomes of the care are also like other legs of the journey. And also those legs of the journey come with, come with different data elements. So, this was sort of purposeful for us. We are our network. MiHIN is our network, and our strategy comes from the input of our stakeholders. And so we really want to get these conversations going about, how are you referring? What is working for you? And why are you referring? And so what? And then what? And how do you get the information you need to make people better? I don't know how much longer, Mike, how many more slides do you have?
There's one after this
Hey,
one.
keep going.
All right, so the last slide was our high-level strategy for how we're approaching both interoperable referrals and cross-sector data sharing as a whole. We're trying, I actually wanted to bring up the fact that MiHIN has always had a relationship with the State Health Information Technology Commission, or the HIT Commission, which meets in Lansing, and it was created by the governor. I don't know what year it was created, but many years ago. There is a community information exchange task force being assembled under the HIT Commission, and that task force is going to be providing a lot of recommendations. And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to do as much groundwork as we can, like getting these vendors together to start pouring through some of these really deep topics, but also leave room for that CIE task force to make recommendations that we can work on implementing ourselves. So we're staying agile in that sense. We're working in stages, and we're working on vendor engagement, which is that community of practice that I mentioned of all the people who have signed the interoperability pledge with the letter of intent. With that, I think we could have questions, and if Lisa wanted to say anything, she could as well.
Okay, so we've come to this place. We've come back to this place. Thank you, Mike. There is a lot there, right? And you went through it in 45 minutes, so you did everything right. And we will be sharing these slides. We have people here that are super passionate about this, and you can write us, you can call us, let's keep talking about it. But again, I want you to think about, as you're here, how can MiHIN support you? That's number one. What data are you looking to share? Why are you looking to share the data? Has the data been consented to be shared in the ways that you're looking to share it? What does a patient gain from sharing the data, and what does a business gain? What does an entity gain? All of these questions. Dina, you again? Dina's my friend, so I can do that to her. Dina, yeah. What's your question?
Okay, so I think the interoperability pledge is a great strategy. What I see is that there's a fair amount of work still to be done, and I'm wondering, what is your recommendation for organizations or entities that are looking at using these types of platforms in until something really big shifts, where I saw some comments that some states they've decided on a single vendor, so it seems like that we're a long ways away from some really big shift. What are organizations, what are you recommending they do? I'm going to jump in. So you're right. There's a lot of things that are going on within this environment, and COVID kind of expedited and increased the urgency for this type of data to flow, but it's a little bit ahead of the technology, and it's a little bit ahead of the data movement laws.
Within this state, some of the things that organizations can do is, as they are kind of connecting and understanding what's happening within that regional environment, each organization is participating in a region. You've got your own resources, understanding kind of what resources are there, understanding whether or not there's a community information exchange already existing within your environment are really great steps. How do you link into those specific CIEs? And we're seeing them pop up all over the state after the original shires, you know, and love or hate the shire concept. What it is it focuses regional efforts. Understanding kind of what platforms exist within those spaces. And let's not reinvent the wheel, you know? If we can, and we are looking to move quickly towards piloting, to be able to understand how we can make that data flow, engage with this learning, because Michigan is being looked at as a proving ground in some ways. We're facing a lot of the issues more fully because of the transformation work that's already gone on, both in healthcare and within the HIE space. And now we're kind of moving into that cross-sector data sharing space. It doesn't give you like, aha, I can go this way, but it's a way to be able to engage and participate and help shape, stay abreast as to what's going on within the CIE task force, ask the questions, be vocal.
There are the HIT Commission's meetings are public, and you can go there, and like we said, we will send out, our partners, we always send out information about the HIT Commission. We send out information about the CIE work group. But I think, Dina, you know, like, let's go back to referrals. If your only goal, if your most pressing goal is to make sure that people get the care they need, get with your partners and find out the best way to communicate with your partners on how to get those people care, right? If your goal is to manage the workflow that happens after a referral, that is like another lift on a system. But I think when we talk about just referrals, understanding how referrals flow between care partners is an agreement. And it can be done. It can be done even without electronic referrals. It can be done using, standards-based, web platforms. But I think that and then there are more goals there. But what is the first purpose? And find a system that works for you and your partners. The point is the care coordination between the partners. What works for you should work for your partners. The task force has already been formed. The representatives have already been chosen by MDHHS, and they are listed.
Joanne, do we want to put the membership list up and provide it?
I was just going to say, maybe when we send this out, we'll include the HIT Commission, meetings and the CIE work group makeup.
And remember that those CIE task force members are there to also, find somebody that you understand, somebody that you have a relationship with, and make your points known.
Right. Look for your representative on the CIE task force, and look for your representative on the HIT Commission. And also, if you have questions about working with MiHIN, or if you should be working with MiHIN, we are here, and that's my job always. Next slide really quick, just so that we can plug our bits and bytes, because people are interested in understanding more about our Referrals Plus and that like new module for reporting. Here's our bits and bytes. I think that the way to sign up was shared in the chat. It's 11:01. I can stick around for a little bit more, but I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you so much.
Take care, folks.